Welcome to Cosmic Sponge, coming at you live from Artemis Station on the moon. I am your host, Stephen Hawk.
I forgot my back suit. I'm Jim.
That's okay, man. We're under the dome.
Jimmy Co. Jimmy Co here, outside of the dome, without my back suit.
No, we're not really broadcasting live. And there is no Artemis Station. I'm thinking whenever the UFO alien overlords take over, maybe my wish will be granted.
I, for one, would like to welcome our insect overlords.
They're probably listening in now.
That's right.
All right. So what have you seen this week, man? What's been going on?
There is another UFO research group that I just recently found. They've been around since, I think, 2019. You can find them at scientificexploration.org. They just had a conference this past week. I found out about it like the day that it started. The speaker list, really interesting, and one that stuck out to me was a Mr. Christopher Cogswell. He wanted to talk about something he's calling Sky Hub. It's a citizen science effort focused on the creation of a do-it-yourself sensor and camera package for automatic detection of aerial events. And the idea is that you would have a lot of people get these devices and put them out so that you could start recording events that are going on in the night sky, and then grab all of that data, put it into a database, and you'd have some machine learning you could apply, artificial intelligence, and start gathering useful data that you can start analyzing and determining what people are seeing in the sky, be it stars, aircraft, or something else.
That's pretty neat. I know I saw some people, and it may be this very group, a couple of years ago, maybe longer, they were talking about doing that very thing. They're like, we're going to get these sensors put up, pointing up at the sky all over the country, as many people as we can, and hopefully it'll see some things, and we'll be able to correlate the data, which is something that the government, if our military wants to do or is doing, would certainly be able to do that. They have pretty sophisticated stuff. Did they talk about what kind of equipment they're going to be using?
They probably did. Like I said, all I have is the excerpt from the PDF that they put out on the speakers that were at the conference. So really all I have is Christopher Cogswell, a little bit of his background. He's not somebody who just stumbled in off the side of the street and got hit in the head and started throwing this idea out there. He's chair of the Scientific Advisory Board for Sky Hub. He received his Bachelor of Science degree from the University of New Hampshire in both chemical engineering and philosophy, a PhD in chemical engineering from Northeastern University. His research work focused on the creation of engineered nanomaterials for various applications, and currently works in the scientific data analytics and publishing industry. Sounds impressive, I guess.
Just not like Joe down at the donut shop, like you're always saying.
Well, Joe has his skills, man. Makes a mean coffee and a great jelly donut.
Did you see the piece about the alien autopsy film? So,
Alien
listeners,
autopsy
in case you have not heard, you can own one 16mm original frame out of that movie, the Alien Autopsy movie that we've all heard about, that Fox Network put the big special, Alien Autopsy, Fact or Fiction. You can own one single frame. The owner is selling it at auction with a reserve of $1 million. Just $1 million, and you can have that original 1947 Roswell frame of an alien being autopsied. And it has a picture of the frame.
I thought that was a replica.
Yeah, that is not a replica. That is the original film.
47 film. It wasn't the hoax film they put out in the 90s. It was the original 47 film.
Here's the thing. When I saw this auction and it's saying, hey, the authentic film and everything, I mean, that thing had been debunked years ago. Years ago. The guy that made the movie made it in his apartment somewhere.
And starred in it.
Totally come out about it and said that's what it is. Then this guy who owns the film, this is the guy that had acquired it, and I don't know the details. I haven't really dug into alien autopsy, but he claims it's still real and that the CIA has authenticated it. And I didn't have time this week, but I have got to track down how the CIA authenticated this film.
It's two CIA guys, eating Joe's donuts and drinking the coffee, and he's going, "Yeah, looks good to me."
Or a guy sitting with Joe saying, "Yeah, I'm in the CIA." Pass that powdered sugar over here. I got something to tell you.
That looks good to me.
Okay, so anyway, just for the record, just going to throw this out there. I haven't done all the deep dive on it yet. I haven't even done the shallow dive, but I think the alien autopsy is fake. Just saying.
I agree.
I thought it was fake when I saw it on Fox. I'm like, come on.
Yeah, I don't remember what I thought at the time. I probably thought, "Ew, I hope there's not a lot of blood."
I don't know, man. Anyway, whatever. Though, I'm sorry if any listeners are into it, but if you are, and you've got $1 million at least, or maybe more, go to this auction. I actually think the auction closed on like the 28th or 29th, but I will follow up next week and let you know who won that frame.
So
if it sold.
So was it 24 frames a second, and how long was the movie? That could be quite a bit of money.
I remember the special was 56 minutes. I think
Holy
it
moly.
was 1 hour special, but I think the film was 40 some. I don't know how long the film is actually, because after I saw this, I was getting ready to go to bed the other night, and I saw Alien Autopsy on Prime Video, so I turned it on, but I fell asleep within. I don't even think I got to the autopsy part. I was just saw where Jonathan Frakes is this real? Fact or fiction? You decide. It's just
fiction.
I never made it past any of that. So
yeah,
they had to go into the whole Roswell UFO crash thing first to set it up.
Gotcha. Yeah, like you, I haven't done even the shallow dive because I think they disproved it a long time ago, and I just took it for granted that they were telling me the truth.
Right, right. But I was very surprised to hear the claim that a CIA or the CIA has verified the film. So I promise listeners I will follow up with that because, I am into the declassified government documents, not the fake CIA government documents. So, and I can almost guarantee you there's nothing in the declassified. In fact, I know there's not because I've perused almost the whole thing. So,
yep.
But anyway, so what else we got? I got one other thing besides this, or you go ahead. You got something else?
No, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in the news right now with UFOs.
There's a lot of stuff going on.
Other than, I think, maybe you'll cover this, there was an additional video that came out showing the video. I'll wonder about this, right? So it's a video from Jeremy Corbell, and it shows somebody taking footage within the command control center of a Navy ship showing the radar display. And I don't know that that's something you want to be doing.
I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, it also is the Omaha.
Yeah, I think that's right. Showing that splashdown.
Right. We talked about the USS Omaha. It's a literal combat ship the U.S. Navy has. And that last video that came out of the UFO, the round-looking one, the spherical object that descended into the water, apparently, was also from the Omaha.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's pretty much it. I didn't look into it a great deal. I mean, it really just shows a radar display, and quite honestly, I'm not sure what I'm looking at when I'm looking at that. Okay, this little dot here is getting closer to this little blinky dot here. What's going on? Yeah,
I'm with you. I wouldn't know. If somebody showed me a radar screen and said, "Can you believe it? Look at that," I would say, okay, what's it mean? But I do know that a bunch of experts and people that know about those displays come forward to say that it looks like a swarm of unknown vehicles, apparently. I don't know. And it's another video from Jeremy Corbell from this same ship. Makes one curious. I don't know if anybody's asked him. I mean, he's definitely making the rounds, Fox, CNN, and everything. The Navy UFO thing is a very big deal right now, and that's really all they're talking about. They're not deviating very much from Navy and UFO.
I wonder if he's gotten a knock on his door from the Navy saying, Mr. Corbell, you're getting some footage that you shouldn't be sharing with the rest of the world. Just in terms of, like, isn't that stuff classified? The displays and that kind of stuff, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, usually the military's very sensitive about showing any of their equipment, how it works, like a display. I mean, I would think that a radar display on board an active duty battleship or warship, that would be classified. Often they don't want to release footage or information about how they've tracked something, a UAP or a UFO, because they don't want to expose their capabilities to our enemies. If you put it on CNN, our enemies know. If the world knows, Russia knows, and China knows, or whoever our potential enemies are. So, yeah, I would think that they weren't very happy with that. I have no idea. I mean, I had the one interview with Jeremy Corbell, but I don't know that he's been asked that question. If he has, I haven't seen it. I mean, I don't know what to make of it other than, here we go, another video. So I would like to talk to Jeremy Corbell. Hopefully we grow the show, get it to a point where we could maybe ask him to come on a show and ask him some of those questions. I'm very interested to know. I mean, he must have someone on that ship. And then, of course, the Navy comes forward and verifies and says, yeah, that's legitimate. That's real. But that's all they say. They're not saying yes or no about any of that, right? All they're basically saying is yeah, that's on one of our ships. That video was shot on our ship.
Right. Yeah, Christopher was on another program. He was advocating for more funds going into research, essentially mainly for the purposes of, let's identify what's in our skies that we don't understand from a security perspective, a national security perspective. It's a good idea to do that.
And again, as I mentioned a couple of episodes ago, I'm a little tired of, here's a Navy video, here's another person talking about the Navy videos and UAPs. That's all there is. It's almost as if we've forgotten about the past 70 years of UFOs. Everything that's ever happened other than the Nimitz forward. Like, all of a sudden UFOs are here. What are these things, and then everybody's all touchy. Oh, got to be careful how I say UFO, or I don't want anybody thinking I'm a saucer nut, or that I believe in aliens and all that. And I get that. If you're a scientist, if you're a science writer, if you're a journalist, if you write too much about UFOs, people are going to just start. It's sort of like an actor gets typecast. For instance, Leonard Nimoy had trouble finding work after he played Spock, right? Because everybody knew him as Spock.
I don't want to be a Vulcan again.
And that happens to actors, to filmmakers. Make a horror movie, make 2 horror movies, the next thing you know, you're the horror movie guy, and that's the only projects you get if you do a pretty good job at it. So journalists are the same way. You write 2 UFO stories, suddenly, oh, you're the guy that does the UFO stories. Oh, well, that's a saucer nut. They write UFO stories. So I've noticed all these journalists that are, knowing they need to report the news, being really careful and still putting goofy pictures on their articles and things like that of aliens and stuff, but then saying, but we need to talk about it seriously because the government is. And I would like to see more just acknowledging this. This has been around a long time. UAPs have been around a long time. They've been harassing the military, or in our airspace for many, many years, and it would be nice to see a little acknowledgement of that other than just focused on these handful of videos that have come out and that it's all about the Navy. Obviously, I wouldn't be doing this podcast if I didn't think there was something to UFOs, to the whole phenomenon. I don't know what it is, and that's part of the reason for doing it. So we do the research and we uncover things. So anyway, I'm going down another tangent. So
yeah, we should be doing the research and looking into some of these older cases, like how about the Belgium UFO Wave, 1989, 1990, 1991?
That's a good one. But before we jump into that, I've got one other news item I want to talk about.
What you got?
I thought you were going to bring this one up.
Uh-oh.
So we did Fire in the Sky. That's the episode we released 2 episodes ago. And that, of course, is about the Travis Walton abduction from 1975. There were 7 loggers riding in a truck. Travis Walton jumps out, goes under a UFO, gets zapped. The rest of them take off. All of them see this happen. And then Travis disappears for 5 days, comes back with the story that he was abducted by a UFO. And so one of the key players in this, one of the loggers, that in fact was the one driving the truck, Mike Rogers, is a very big player in this. Was one of Travis's best friends, and they worked together, brother-in-law, I think, too, at one point. And so apparently Mike has put on his Facebook page, I, Michael H. Rogers, being of sound and rational mind, do hereby give notice that I am no longer to be considered a witness to Travis C. Walton's supposed abduction on November 5th, 1975. So, what do you think about that?
I think if he got enough money off of this theoretical new show that Travis is going to put out where he redoes Fire in the Sky and changes it so it's more in line with the original story, that as long as he gets some cut of that, he'll change his tune back. But otherwise, hey, screw you, Travis. You're not sharing the money with this story.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to money.
Yeah.
If you read the article, by the way, Jimmy posted this to our Facebook page. Go to Cosmic Sponge on Facebook if you're into Facebook. We have a lot of these news stories on there, and you can find it and read the whole thing. So, yeah, apparently there's been some squabbles over cash in the past. I think Mike may have done his book cover or something like that.
Oh, some of the artwork.
Never got paid for it.
Mm-hmm. Some money squabbles.
What'd you call the article? Fire in the ground? Instead of fire in the sky?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I don't know. But
all right.
That's UFO stuff for you.
Yeah, no kidding. You got anything else before we jump into the Belgium UFO wave?
No, nothing off the top of my head. I'm ready to go, man.
So before we get started on tonight's main topic, just want to remind everyone to rate and review wherever you listen. It really helps us out, helps bump us up in the ratings, helps other people find the show. If you'd like to reach out to the show, you can get in touch with us at the email address of firstcontact@cosmicsponge.com. If you have some type of extraordinary story, some type of encounter, we would love to hear about it. And if you would like for us to share it on the show, just make sure you make that clear. And if you want to stay anonymous, make that clear as well. Just let us know where you're from if we would like to share that information.
Actually, I do have one thing to add. You reminded me with that little spiel, is that
spiel.
Yes, we have had some comments and responses on both Facebook and YouTube. We've responded to them. Really appreciate all the comments. And there's been some suggestions of corrections that we need to make. We're going to look into that, make some corrections in the near future. And we love to hear the feedback. And we don't care if you guys are calling us out on things we're getting wrong. We love that. We want to get it right. So keep the comments coming.
That's another good point. And if you disagree with our point of view about a certain topic, let us know that too. We may share that on the show. I mean, that's great. Part of why we're doing this, we want to build a community of people talking about this phenomenon and maybe some other weird wonders of the world. I did leave that out tonight because, the live broadcast from Artemis Station and all. Anyway.
There's a delay.
Yeah, that half-second delay, speed of light. What we're going to talk about tonight, our main topic, is the Belgium UFO wave, and this occurred in 1989 is when it began, pretty much peaked out by the spring of 1990. There was an Unsolved Mysteries episode that aired November 10th, 1991. I believe it was episode 10 of season 4 is how most Americans first heard about the Belgium UFO wave. An estimated 13,500 Belgian citizens said that they saw large triangular slow-moving UFOs moving across the Belgium countryside and through some cities like Brussels. There were quite a few witnesses to come forward. I know that probably over 2,000 were investigated. It's the biggest deal for UFOs in Belgium. It's really where you first started hearing about the triangular-shaped UFO with the 3 lights at each point. This thing was seen all over the matter of a few weeks. And Jimmy's done some legwork on this one, so I'm going to let him do the rundown on how this thing got started.
I have short legs, so this isn't a really long run. So let's talk about where Belgium's located. Because I got Chernobyl wrong, I want to get Belgium right.
Okay, Jimmy, Belgium's in Europe.
It is.
So you know,
it is.
Western Europe.
It's located on the southeast of the North Sea with the Netherlands to the north, Germany to the east, Luxembourg to the southeast, and France to the southwest. Now, in 1990, there were about 10 million people in Belgium. And it's worth noting that all of these sightings, as far as I can tell, only occurred in Belgium. None of the surrounding countries had any sightings. Belgium's basically about 60% of them speak Dutch, and then the remaining 40%, mostly 40%, speak French. There is a small contingent that speak German, including the town of Eupen, which is only 7 miles from the German border. And that's where our story really takes place. 2 policemen were patrolling outside. Yep.
I did want to say that is correct about the 3 languages. There is no official language in Belgium. I, oddly enough, looked it up. All 3 languages are spoken there, and it's in their constitution to allow whatever language is your natural language. Now, it says Dutch, but there's actually a dialect called Flemish that is a derivative of Dutch, is what they speak.
Oh, well, that's good to know. Thanks for that correction. Flemish. Hey, Flemish, you say?
That's what I'm here for.
Flemish. So these guys, I'm not sure if they spoke Flemish.
I'm probably going to edit that, just maybe come off sounding like actually.
Actually, it was Flemish.
Actually, it's called Flemish. It's not just Dutch.
Hey, did you watch the Unsolved Mysteries thing? Did they use the original officers? I think they did in the reenactments.
I don't know.
It sounded to me like they were speaking French, not German.
Well, most in southern Belgium speak French because, France is right to the south of them. So
this was to the east, right? 7 miles from the German border. But
actually, if you can look, if you look at if you can find a map that shows the language divisions. The Flemish is mostly kind of the northwest of the country, but I'm sure. I mean, it's a European country, man. They all speak. They're multilingual. I mean,
do any of them speak Martian?
Anything can happen in Europe. They will find someone that speaks English. You ever notice that? And speak it well.
Yeah.
Come to America, maybe Spanish.
Everybody in my state speaks 2 or 3 languages. I mean, I go back home, I can't understand a word my little brother says.
That's a dialect, man.
It's a different language to me.
Hillbilly.
Yeah.
Hey, wait a minute. What am I talking about? I live down here. All right.
Yours is a
dialect. Let's move on.
Moving on. Thanks for that aside. So, all right. 2 policemen were on patrol outside of Eupen when they noticed a field lit up just off the side of the road. So as they approached, they pulled over, they stopped, and they were trying to get a better look at what was producing the light. The one officer, Dimes Heinrich Nicole, and then there was Hubert von Montague, I think is his last name. They were...
Yeah, we're butchering these French names, so... Yeah,
and sorry. I apologize. It's... I only speak...
Heinrich.
Speak one language.
Hubert?
Yeah, I only speak one language and not well.
It's probably Hubert. You think?
Hubert.
If it's French, I don't know.
I don't know. Do you speak French? I don't speak French.
I took French, but no.
Nope. So anyway, Officer 1 and Officer 2 were in the field, and they were observing these lights that were shining down on, this large field. They said it was like the size of a football field, something like that. In the middle of this light pattern, they saw this orange light pulsing, and they could see the shape of the object, and they said it was an enormous triangular platform, and it was moving silently. It starts going down the road. These guys get in their car and they start following it, and while they're following it, they're calling back to Eupen and contacting this dispatcher and saying, hey, we've got this large thing moving towards the town and we just want to report it in. They joked a little bit back and forth saying, maybe it was Santa Claus looking for a place to land, being in November. But
hey, can I ask you a quick question just to interrupt you?
Sure.
So the 2 police officers were chasing this thing down. Did they respond to a call that there was a strange sighting, or did they just happen upon this?
Now that's interesting you bring that up, because everything I've seen indicates, so first, we're sort of recounting this from the Americans' perspective off of the Unsolved Mysteries show. So there's going to be a little bit of dramatic license in the show to some degree. They try to keep it pretty factual, I think, but obviously they lean a little bit into the UFO and an unidentified part of the story. But all indications were they just happened upon it. Did you see anything that contradicts that?
No, and that's why I was asking. I didn't know if you came across it or not. It says here the events of 29th November would be documented by no less than 30 different group of witnesses and 3 separate groups of police officers. Now, that's kind of jumping ahead on the story. But now, that quote is from kind of a pro-UFO-y forum that I found, and it was something put out by Nicholas Pope. I know I know he used to work for the British government on their UFO desk and was in charge of UFO reports for quite a long time, and he's definitely a proponent of UFOs.
I found another account of it, so it provides a little bit more detail, I think, giving us a little bit more in terms of time and location. So at 5:20 p.m. on the N68 road, both Nicole and Montague, man, I wish I could say your name, man. Policeman number 1 and policeman 2 were on their patrol near Ketness. They were surprised to see a craft with 3 lights laid out in a triangle moving at a low altitude, but they don't specify what they mean by low altitude. Like, was it 5 feet off the ground, or was it like 1,000 feet off the ground? No indication there. Initially, they thought they were seeing a helicopter. Back to that J. Allen Hynek thing, where At first, I thought it was a helicopter.
Yeah, that's right.
As they did not hear any noise, they changed their mind and thought maybe a UFO. At least that's what we hear from SoBeeps, which is a UFO reporting group in Belgium. It's the silence of the craft that astonishes both of the policemen. They don't hear a noise or anything other than that of their car in road traffic. There were several vehicles that overtook them as they were trying to keep pace with the ship or the vehicle or the UFO as they were following it. Well, that's not entirely true in terms of they heard no sound. Maybe the policemen didn't hear any sounds, but there were several other indications that other people did hear sounds. And some of it was described similar to that of a helicopter far away. So I think that's worth noting, and that's what you were basically saying earlier, is that this wasn't just 2 police officers that saw this. The dispatcher apparently saw it, as well as a total of a total of 11 police officers saw it, and about 100 to 130 citizens saw this craft.
Right, and this was all on that one night, so there was something there.
Exactly.
Everyone describes the same thing.
Well, it gets a little bit more interesting, right? Because the police officers, still on the 29th, the police officers indicate that it goes down, and at one point, a little orange ball descends from it. And then 2 laser beams shoot out left and right, something the dispatcher also saw from a distance, as if it were taking some kind of readings. And then a second craft shows up off to their right, comes up from behind some trees from the ground, and then both ships take off, or both unidentified objects take off, and that's pretty much the sighting for the 29th.
And they show all that on that Unsolved Mysteries episode. Right. If you want to check it out, it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool little reenactment. They have, they're chasing the one craft, but it finally's going to outpace them, and they stop and they get out, and then the other one comes up from behind them, behind some trees, and zooms over at low altitude. So I'm not sure when this happened during actually I do, it's December of 1989. A Colonel André Almond, he's a civil engineering officer in the Belgium Army. He had a sighting. Him and his wife were driving through the countryside, and he saw at first what was like some kind of yellow panel thing all lit up, very low through the trees, but this is December, so the leaves are off the trees. So he stops the car and gets out, starts looking at it, and this craft starts moving toward him, and his wife's totally freaking out and saying, let's go, and but he witnesses it as well. So that was an engineer for the Belgium, a colonel for the Belgium Army, interviewed and said it most definitely was what everyone described, this triangular craft with the 3 bright white lights on each corner, a smaller pulsing red or orangey light in the middle.
So there's a document that was put out by Renaud Leclay on the Belgian UFO Wave of 89 to 92, where he explores the possibility that what people were seeing were helicopters. Mm-hmm. And he specifically singles out this sighting that you're describing as the first one that he wanted to tackle in terms of it being a helicopter versus it being something else. And there's a little bit more information in that document, and I'll include it on our website so you can go in and look at it.
They did make note of that. There was a Huey, a UH-1, I think, operating in the air around some of these sightings. And of course, all the skeptics are like, hey, it had been one big white bright spotlight and everybody just mistaken it for Venus and something else. So they're going to come up with whatever, as they always do, from the safety of their homes.
Exactly.
There were some other sightings. There was a video that got a lot of attention. This was near the end of the whole thing. March 31st in 1990, there was a Marcel Alfreano, a shopkeeper in Brussels. He said that he saw the craft moving right over top of the buildings, right over the city. And he was on maybe 2nd or 3rd floor. And he had a video camera and videoed it right out of his window or balcony or something. And the video's pretty good. Have you seen it?
No.
I looked it up.
I wasn't able to find any. I found one video that I couldn't determine the provenance of it.
The quality on YouTube's pretty bad, but I did some digging and I found it. But that video has actually, even this, as Jimmy had mentioned, Kobits, I guess is how you would pronounce it, even their UFO group, they said if you look at it and really examine it, and I watched that video over and over and over today, I still couldn't see it myself, but they say that it is a commercial airliner landing. It's just the angle of it, or coming in for an approach. The three lights and the red pulsing light, sort of like a beacon. I mean, it's exactly what everyone's describing. So when you look at it and you're watching that video, and I watched some documentary that said, hey, we got video, and I'm watching that and I'm thinking, hey, this, that's pretty good. That looks pretty convincing. But then apparently after had really been looked at and examined and went through it is apparently just a regular plane landing or coming in for a landing or something like that. So I think that's why we don't hear anything about that video now, because what I had saw it on the video was a little older.
Yeah, so that's good you were able to find some non-hoaxy film footage or photographs of this, because there is just a little bit out there in terms of...
Well, we may as well just let the cat out of the bag. So the big famous picture that you always see just right now, listeners, if you have access to a computer, type in Belgium UFO Wave. In fact, if you've already done it after we've been talking, then you have seen a picture of the craft, the triangular craft with the three bright lights on each corner and the red light in the middle. And that is known as the Petite Richane picture. Turns out it was a fake.
Patrick Marichal, he even invited Belgian reporters to his home to show them exactly what he had done, showed other photographs that they'd taken around the same time and how they did it using a sheet of styrofoam cut into a triangle, painted black, and bedded with a flashlight in each corner, and then hung it from a string. And that's why it's so cropped. They didn't want to show any of the surrounding area, so they crop it in really close and make it a little blurry, and you're good to go. That's what it takes. Yeah, so I do want to get to the next part of the story here, which is the next significant part of the story, which happens in March of 1990. And that is where the military gets involved and wants to try to alleviate some of these mass sightings that the public is seeing, because the public's like, we really want to know what's going on here.
The government did become involved. What they wanted to do was try and get to the bottom of it and chase down one of these objects that everyone in the countryside had seen. I mean, it had a lot of government people interested. It had the military most definitely interested. Belgium's a really small country, so it's smaller than most states. I think 30-some U.S. states are bigger than the country of Belgium. Just to give you an idea, as Jimmy said, there's only 10 million people in the whole country at the time. What they were trying to do, they'd had a couple of false alarms. They tried to scramble a couple of jets as this happened. So what they decided to do was wait until there was a verified sighting on the ground by people. Then the police were called. Then when the police were called, if they could verify this sighting, then they said they would check the radar. And then if they checked their ground-based radar, only then would they scramble the jets. And that happened on March 30th.
Right.
1990.
Because it costs a lot of money to fly those jets. So they couch it as like a training exercise with this additional goal of determining what's going on in the skies. But that's really the only goal they had. What's going on? So they scramble. What kind of jets do they scramble?
2 F-16s. That's a single-seat fighter built by the United States, supplied to Belgium because they're a NATO country.
So as part of this, the F-16s are using the AN APG-66 radar system.
Oh, is that manufactured by the Raytheon Corporation?
I do believe it is.
Is it really?
I don't know.
Right.
I don't know, but I'm going to say it is because Raytheon called me. So this radar has several modes of operations. Has a range while search, track while scan, velocity search, air combat mode, and each of these are used under various conditions. And what they were primarily using was the wide sweep when they were doing this particular exercise on March the 30th, 31st. And the reason why it's March 30th, 31st was because it happened right around midnight. It's interesting because initially they were getting target hits off of the F-16s, and there were 4 ground-based radar locations that were getting hits. So we have a lot of information, a lot of data that comes in that we can then mine and draw a picture and better understand what they were seeing. And the conclusion of it, after examining the data, was that this was the result of multiple things happening, which are essentially false positives caused by the weather. First of all, most of the hits were happening around the 10,000 foot range, and there was weather patterns going on at 10,000 feet that were essentially weather inversions.
So, real quick,
yeah,
before we jump right into the skeptical piece.
Sure.
The two F-16s were scrambled. They reported getting radar lock on the objects. Now, there is a NATO monitoring station in Belgium at Glans. They were contacted and they kept this object on their screens. I'm not sure the name of the other one, but 100 miles away, they also verified this object was there. The two F-16s were able to get radar lock multiple times, and this is coming from the pilot, and this is also coming from DeBauer. He was in charge of the entire operation, and he is an officer in the Belgium Air Force. And to this day, despite all of the skeptical stuff out there, William de Brouwer, and if you watch any kind of UFO documentaries, if you've seen any of the stuff done at the press club that Stephen Greer had organized, a few of these where a lot of military people have come forward and told their stories, that's who it is from Belgium. You've definitely seen this man, William de Brouwer, from the Belgian Air Force. I think he was a colonel at the time, but he may have retired as a general. I heard the story right from him, close to when that time was. He said they verified from all these radars. Now, the F-16s got multiple locks several times on the objects. They have released the radar data where they show the locks. Now, I can't read it. I don't understand what it means, but they basically show these little dots coming from the top and then a lock on it. The two pilots were never able to get actual visual, lay eyes on the objects. They said the object, whenever they would get close, would do these erratic maneuvers and be at 10,000 feet and drop altitude suddenly. They would do right-hand turns. Things we've come to associate with airplanes and jets trying to chase down UFOs, that they would just outmaneuver them, outfly them, and then disappear.
Yeah, exceeding speeds of 900 miles per hour or 900 knots without breaking the sound barrier. So another...
Right. That was the story from the pilots. That's what Colonel de Brouwer said, and they still believe that to this day. But there have been a few skeptics to come forward with some other ideas. And go ahead, Jimmy. I know you love the skeptic thing.
A lot of work was put into analyzing the data, and there's a play-by-play, which I'll also link to our website for our listeners. We have several different radar stations that we want to talk about, and I don't want to get too far down into the details. I'll leave that to our listeners to go and look at this because it's pretty dense and it's pretty detailed. And it includes radar stations at Glans and Semmerzak, both of which track to target, but never more than one. The Glans radar is an air defense radar station located near Brussels, about 60 miles east-southeast of Brussels. Semmerzak, or Semmerzake, I don't know which that is a military ATC station located some 30 miles west of Brussels. The targets that were tracked to the southwest of Brussels, near Nivelles, there appears to be an air base called, I can't even pronounce this. Sorry, my French-speaking friends. But somewhere in that area, there's a air base that's located that often is referenced in the transcript. A lot of things that you read in here indicates like the pilots gets locks at an altitude of 9,000 feet and a speed of 970 nautical miles per hour, which then drops to 310 nautical miles per hour. So it's dropping pretty fast, too, those different speeds, which would kill a human being. If that's indeed what was happening, if it was a real object they were tracking. And I think this is where I come out on this is, as you go through the data, sometimes these targets would drop below ground, which isn't possible unless, I guess, it goes into an alternate dimension and still is able to maintain a radar lock. It sounds more like a sensor issue. And they even indicated that several of the locks by the F-16s were cases where one F-16 would lock onto the lead F-16 fighter, and they could, after analyzing the data, they could determine that was indeed the case. So there's a lot of false positives in the radar data that they were able to track down. They were also able to look at the weather patterns and understand that a lot of the things they were getting both from the ground-based radar systems and the F-16s were indicative of weather-caused radar false positives.
Go ahead and say it, man. Say it, because that's what it is every time there's a visual radar sighting. What is it?
It's a temperature inversion. They actually have another name for it, if I remember.
I think there was a temperature inversion and a weather balloon.
That's right. There was definitely both of those things.
It was a temperature inversion and a Huey helicopter, apparently. And don't forget the tainted
tainted mayo. We're going to get to the tainted mayo, my friend. And I have questions because I want to know more about the tainted mayo. But look, at the end of the day, they do a deep dive on the radar data, and you can go one of two routes here. You can believe that there was an actual UFO in the skies over Belgium, and only over Belgium, and only seen by 13,000 people, and all 13,000 people got it wrong because of tainted mayo. Or you can believe, I guess there's several ways you could believe this, right? Because the radar data could all be wrong and there's still a UFO. The radar data could all be right and there still could be a UFO.
I just want to say something about this particular debunk of that night. And I think all of this work is based on a man named Professor Meisen. And so I've noticed this lately since I've been getting into this subject, is that one professor or one person who's really good at something like this will debunk it, and then all of the other skeptics and debunkers just point to that guy's work. Have you ever noticed that? For instance, anytime you talk about like the Travis Walton thing and new skeptics want to talk about it, all they do is point to the work of Philip Klass. That's it. They just talk about that. They don't come up with anything new on their own. They just always point to, okay, this is what this one guy said about it, totally disregarding all of the sightings, everything else. But as a skeptic, I'm just going to point to that. So I think the page you pulled up is exactly that. And it was all the work done by this professor. But now there's another professor involved here. There was a Professor Emil Schweitzer. He's a distinguished physicist and a teacher at Belgium's elite military academy. And he said that it was highly unlikely that all four of the radar systems, and he meant the two on the ground and, of course, the two in the F-16s, could have gotten the same results, whether it was a weather phenomenon, temperature inversions, or some type of software glitch. All four of those systems are different. They use different antenna. They use different software. They would not all have come up with such similar results. And also the orientation toward the object itself, that they all had the same orientation to what it was. Like, here's the object, it's in this place of the sky. So all the radars agreed with that. So if it was some kind of strange weather patterns, temperature inversions, whatever, that's highly unlikely, according to him, that would have been the case. All of the cockpit tapes, all the data was examined by Belgium's Center for the Study of Electronic Warfare, and he was their primary consultant for that. In his opinion, he said, I'll probably be fired by my colleagues for saying this, but I really think that an ET intelligence is very highly likely. This guy's an expert. This guy is a radar specialist, was at the Center for the Study of Electronic Warfare, a radar specialist who also is a physicist and teaches at their military academy. He found that particular incident was unexplained.
March the 30th, 31st, huh? That one?
That's correct.
Huh.
And if you see an interview with the pilots, only one pilot I saw interviewed, he said there's no way it was a weather pattern. I mean, he's just adamant. But, pilots make poor observers, right?
Sometimes it depends on how drunk they are.
Yeah. So beyond that, so basically what we've talked about is the one night when the whole thing began, and then this was probably the climax of the entire thing, because after this, the sightings began to go down. So there is an UFO organization that Jimmy had mentioned earlier called SOBEPS, and it's spelled COBEPS, and it's the Belgium Committee for the Study of Space Phenomenon. Now, they're a civilian UFO group, so yeah, they're going to be enthusiastic. There's some interesting pieces in here, and this paper, investigative report, was put together shortly after the photograph was debunked. They said now that it's been proved a fake, that it still doesn't lessen the validity of the entire sighting. Even though the photo was fake, it's like, hey man, this thing still happened. Somebody made a fake photo and for fun. Or when you're in there and you're using that photograph and you keep saying, hey, look here, someone took a photograph of it, and then finally find out that it was styrofoam, it is embarrassing. So there's a few things in here. They had some statistics for all the sightings. So the total sightings during the entire event between 1989 and 1993. 89, they had 454 sightings. 1990, 447. But then it drops down to 224 in 91, and then on down to 94 and 92, and then only 63, which is still a lot for a small country like Belgium, in 1993. So it was a total of 1,282 that they investigated, I believe, because there were more reports than that for sure. And there was another professor, but I'll just leave it for now. I know there was another university professor that had studied something like 800 of the eyewitness testimonies himself, and he also found it to be very strange that these objects appeared to be going slowly and scanning like farmland and just out in the country kind of thing.
Yeah, so I don't even know what to make of it. After having done all the research, obviously I lean towards more terrestrial explanations for a lot of this stuff. There's no data that's been supplied other than what you just gave me, which I'd have to look into, the radar expert, his conclusions. I would like to see that. I don't like it when people just automatically jump to little green men. UFOs. Right. It makes me uncomfortable. I've already talked about this. It does make me uncomfortable. I'm not opposed to it. I need more data than what we have. I mean, just eyewitness testimony is not enough for me. I haven't seen video footage, photographs, or other data. And the radar data, I've heard a lot of people and read a lot of people who say that there are perfectly reasonable explanations for it, though I would like to look a little bit more into this other information you have. So that'd be fun to dive into.
The idea that most skeptics have is, and this is a common skepticism of UFO sightings, especially you have a big explosion of them, right? You have this big wave. It's the same thing that happened in 1947, for instance. You have Kenneth Arnold. He sees him in June. After his report of a flying saucer became public and was in national news, suddenly there are sightings everywhere. So you have to ask yourself, is that because there's a lot more flying saucers in the air? Or is it because people are saying, I saw something strange a couple of nights ago. I bet you that was one of those flying saucers.
Or maybe people look up more than they do normally.
Right.
And they are seeing.
They go out in the yard.
Yeah.
Or maybe there really is triangular craft of unknown origin floating around the Belgium countryside that many people claim to have seen, and many military people said they've seen, many police officers saw, which apparently are 94% infallible, but, according to one report I read.
Well, here's the thing. There is a problem with tainted mayonnaise around that time.
I got to find out about the tainted mayonnaise. Jimmy and I, when we first started on this story, ran across just the very first thing you go to Belgium UFO. There's a page that says top 10 UFO sightings in the world, and one of them is like the Belgium UFO Wave. And just a little brief thing, but then it says something about tainted mayonnaise.
Yeah, skeptics explain it as the result of tainted mayonnaise. So I was like, that's the one we're doing. And for complete transparency, we are doing this entirely because of the tainted mayonnaise. Now, there's a little bit of disappointment on our part because as we're doing more research, it's difficult to find out exactly where that ties into this story. Other than fries with mayo is apparently a big deal in Belgium. They take it seriously.
Along with waffles, apparently.
Along with waffles. Well, not mayonnaise and waffles.
I wonder what Belgian people call French fries.
Belgium fries.
Freedom fries.
Yeah, I call them freedom fries. That's so stupid.
No, they probably call them chips like the English do.
I think they do.
So. Or fried potatoes. Who knows?
Hey, there's another piece of this story I want to bring up real quick. Did you know that...
Well, let me ask you one quick question.
Sure.
Since you brought up the tainted mayonnaise. Did you ever find it? I never could find it.
I just found the one...
mayonnaise.
I found two sites. The one site that referenced tainted mayonnaise and another that just referenced a bad batch of mayonnaise at a pub or some such.
Right. And I think I remember years ago, I looked into this case... I don't know how many years ago. And if I'm not mistaken, the Wikipedia page, because probably whoever made that top 10 UFO page probably just went to Wikipedia and got the description of every single sighting. And if I'm not mistaken, Wikipedia used to have a thing, because they're very skeptical. They always put the skeptic thing in there. They'll say, this is what happened, and then say, most skeptics think this is what happened. And I swear there was something about tainted mayonnaise in the old Wikipedia page, but it's not there now.
So if any of our listeners can find some details about tainted mayonnaise and the Belgium UFO wave, we need love to see it.
How tainted mayonnaise affected the Belgium UFO wave. How did that cause the Belgian UFO waves? Apparently, I'm guessing that it caused some type of hallucination.
It's a psychedelic.
You get bad mayo, you go out on the street, you see just a regular helicopter, but suddenly you see 3 lights instead of 1, and it's a triangular-shaped UFO.
Yeah, we're
all just from bad mayonnaise. See, I don't eat mayonnaise. I'm a mustard guy.
We make our mayo dipping sauce with mushrooms from the forest. I'll have 2 of those.
All right, so you've got one more thing you want to bring up.
I could bring up a ton of stuff, but I just did want to bring up, because I'm getting into this radar stuff. I think we should do a show just on radar. It sounds like it'd be boring, but I think we can make it fun.
Sure, we'll make it fun.
I want to know a little bit more about it. I'm going to read a little bit more about it just so I understand it better. But did you know that the AN/APG 66 radar that was used by the F-16s was upgraded in 1990 to the APG 66 V2? For many reasons. One of these reasons was, quote, enhanced operational performance, including an improved mapping capability and a reduced false alarm rate.
Okay.
Just saying.
You said it was upgraded in 1990, and this event happened in 1990. Do you know if those Belgium Air Force F-16s were upgraded with the new radar system or not?
Almost certainly they weren't. I mean, come on.
You don't know. They're a NATO partner, man.
Sure, but,
the former Soviet Union was just right over the hill.
Well, that's true.
Right on the other side of Germany.
They probably just released them in Belgium so they could test them on the triangle UFOs to make sure they were working properly.
Yeah, that was one thing that De Brouwer said was when they heard about the craft, had so many reports of it, they said one of the things they thought about was some type of secret aircraft. Some type of new top secret vehicle. And they said the only country they could think of that would do that would be the United States, the only country with the capabilities of building something like that. And they said, first of all, we have no idea why they would be operating in Belgium. But they actually reached out to the United States government, and the United States government officially said that, no, we don't have anything over there. We don't have anything like that, which I believe. I mean, that was 30 years ago. I would say and I know there's some conspiracy stuff on the web talking about a TR-3B vehicle.
I was going to bring that up, the TR-3B Astra. That's what they're calling. I was just looking that up, but now that you brought that up, I remembered that. But I looked into that, and it's basically all just conjecture as far as I can tell by people who said in the early 80s we apparently have these plasma turbines or something.
Isn't it
sound like a science fiction show?
I think it's supposed to be some of the reverse engineered from the flying saucers that we've recovered. Something about spinning mercury around at like 250,000 revolutions per minute, something like that. I don't know. I didn't dig into it a whole lot, but hey, listeners, if you know something about the Aurora or the Astra or this T3B, let us know. Especially if you're a former military that worked at Groom Lake. We need to know. We need to know.
Love to know. And if you're a part of the Raytheon Corporation,
call me.
You have some new radar information, call me.
Yeah. And that's an inside joke if this is your first episode.
Go back and find the hidden cookies.
So everyone looks at just the F-16. So all the skeptics want to focus on that encounter. Okay, let's say that didn't happen. Or let's say
we're in the speculation part.
Yeah, I mean, let's say it was temperature inversions. They got excited, and all of these military people and experts and frontline NATO troops, radar operators, were all mistaken. Okay, it's possible. And then if you want to use the skeptic word, it's much more likely than a UFO or a spacecraft.
It is much more likely.
So take that out of the equation. You still have all these sightings. You still have many, many sightings around the country. Now, there is no photographic evidence that we're aware of. Now, if you look at this report from SOBEPS, there's a few photographs, but if you go to this near the end of this 40-page report, they look like blobs. I mean, they're nothing. you can make absolutely nothing of them.
You know what? I just want to make an aside here. I don't know that photographs have gotten much better. Have they?
I think a big problem is that cell phones are designed to take a picture of you very closely. They just aren't designed for long distance or zooming or any of that kind of stuff. They're just not.
Or nighttime photography. And by the way, we didn't get digital cameras until what, 1994 with the Apple QuickTake 100?
Well, I'm thinking, though, they didn't really become common probably till around 2000. I know my first digital video camera I bought in 2000.
Yeah, the Sony CyberShot was the big mass-produced thing, and that was in 96. And they were probably still so expensive they were out of the reach of the average consumer.
They got really popular. Of course, now everyone uses a cell phone, but digital cameras had that probably 10 to 15-year popularity span where you would take pictures and have it on the card and transfer it to your computer or what have you. So I found the other photograph we were talking about. The second photograph that is undoubtedly fake is called the Henrardi photograph. This witness claims to have realized two pictures whose existence was revealed in 2003, representing a flying triangle with cut edges similar to the Petite Rochon one. It was first mentioned, two pictures appeared December 21st, 2005 on the site www.iwasabducted.com. Yeah.
Nice.
The page is entitled Triangle UFO Flap in Belgium. Again, it's called the Henrardi, and there's two of them. It looks essentially like the more famous one that has been debunked. So, I mean, you really can't, no one's really come forward. Apparently, So Peeps reached out, tried to find out who the photographer was, and has never had any luck with that.
You've got the stuff that happened on the 31st, so you got the radar data, and it looks like here that the pilots got intermittent contact with objects. They were going too fast, moving up and down too fast, even going underground.
According to
that
analyst.
Seems to me that's more of like a sensor issue, according to that analyst. This is the military. This is their official stance. The Belgian military only reported 3 locks instead of 9, and upon analyzing the data, all 3 radar locks were on each other. The other contacts were all found to be the results of a well-known atmospheric interference called Bragg scattering. Is that not temperature inversion? Is that a fancy word for temperature inversion, or is that a different one? Should we start looking into Bragg scattering? Let's see, what is that? In airspace surveillance radars, this effect becomes more disturbing. Random sequences of inhomogeneities in the air density can produce so-called clear air echoes. These are referred to as angels and may cause false alarms. There's this inconclusive or this maybe gray area with the radar data that, I mean, there's just no good concrete results from the sighting. I mean, it could be just people looking up, 13,000 people looking up in the skies, only in Belgium, because apparently this is the only place where triangle UFOs were vacationing at the time.
I didn't see anything about any sightings in Germany or France or the Netherlands.
Yeah, you know, I was wondering, where did triangle UFOs first?
When I saw that Unsolved Mysteries episode, probably is the first time I'd ever heard of a triangle-shaped UFO. I will say that they have been spotted. I heard a report that they were spotted in the or out west somewhere, like one of the Arizona, New Mexico or somewhere.
The Phoenix Lights, right, was all about the triangle UFO.
Well, that was some allegedly gigantic boomerang or triangle shape that was miles across or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I haven't really dug into that one. But no, there was one that was apparently, I guess, a normal-sized one. I don't know.
Normal size? What's a normal-sized one?
Like not one that's
20
wide.
feet across?
I don't know. But anyway, a triangular-shaped craft that sounds very much like this description with the beam scanning the ground.
Oh, yeah. I remember vaguely seeing that. There was a couple of hikers.
But I remember for my own part, this is the first time as far as the equilateral triangular type vehicle. The Lubbock Lights back in the 50s had more of a boomerang shaped, I would say, object that was really well documented with photographs and things. Yeah, I guess that's part of the problem I have with this particular case for me, disregarding the F-16s, although the people involved that were there seemed pretty convinced there was something there. And I'll just leave it at that. I mean, those were the men on the ground, and they were the professional soldiers. You know how it is. When you're convinced of something, you dig in. People don't like to be told they're wrong. I know even today, De Brouwer still backs up his claims.
So there's two things I want to cover here really quickly. So one is exactly what you're saying. What we're doing is we're attempting to package a lot of different sightings and a lot of different witness testimony and a lot of different data points that went over a course of several years into a single package. Mm-hmm. And it may be the case that in some of these instances, they actually saw a physical object that got picked up by radar, maybe even behaved in an unusual way. But it's hard to really pull at each of the threads and figure out which ones have accurate data that correlate more closely to an extraterrestrial hypothesis or to a terrestrial hypothesis, like in the terms of maybe it was a helicopter person A saw, but person B saw something that can't be explained by a helicopter, but was still something else. I mean, that's the problem, right? You're trying to package all this into a single thing and say it was this triangle UFO that all 13,000 people saw after eating tainted mayonnaise. So I don't know that you could do that. I did, however, was curious. I was like, when did the first triangle UFO, when was it first at least recorded that there was observations made?
In the world or in Belgium?
In the world. So I went back and I found that there was a Nuremberg event in 1561.
Oh.
First. Yeah, right?
That's really going back.
It was really going back. And then Charles Fort gathered accounts of a triangle UFOs dating as far back as the 1800s in the Book of the Damned, which I'm going to look into that. That's something a lot of people who are into the paranormal and stuff like referencing. So that might be interesting to see what his thoughts are. Maybe he's a wackadoodle. Maybe he's got some good observations. I don't know anything about him.
Did you say wackadoodle?
A wackadoodle. I don't know. A nutcase. I don't know. Or maybe he's perfectly normal.
No, just wackadoodle. You know, wackadoodle. I like it.
I do too.
Actually, my wife uses that a lot.
Now,
wackadoodle.
That's probably where I picked it up. So
yeah,
it's so in 1952 during Operation Mainbrace in the North Sea, a triangle was seen from a Danish Navy vessel. Gave off a blue light and shot up from the water vertically at 900 miles per hour. Same speed, same top speed. So this is the speculation part, ladies and gentlemen. So
hey, we're not speculating. Jimmy's reading off UFO accounts. It's not speculating.
That's right. It's not speculation. Speculation on somebody's part. I'm just advancing the speculation. There you have it. Some triangle UFOs from history. I think it's interesting.
Real quickly, the UFO organization wanted to find out if there were any landings or trace elements. They discovered, out of the 1,282, only found 2 cases of claimed landings that have left possible traces. First one was from MJD, a retired archaeologist, and his wife. He had been checking his greenhouse and was about to go home when he heard the barking of nearby dogs. Intrigued, he lifted his head to the sky, but didn't notice anything of special interest. Turning back to the ground, 100 meters away from him, a pyramidal or conical, illuminated shaped object topped with what looked like a bright white mushroom cone floating about 1 foot above the ground. Mr. D approached about 50 meters before he was stopped by a wired fence. During the next few minutes, he remained there, contemplating the object, whose color suddenly changed from white to orange, while its upper part rose. Under it appeared on the object a small, evased-looking cavity, over which the upper part fell back again. Surprised but not really alarmed, the witness called his wife, who could also observe the landed structure. In her opinion, there were 2 small antennae on top. The couple then decided to rejoin their nearby home to ask their son G to come to videotape the scene. But when they came back, there was nothing more to be seen. The next day, MJD went to the meadow where he says he discovered 4 circular diggings, about 1 meter in diameter in the ground, and a thin layer of yellowish powder sprayed on the grass. Strangely behaving for a former archaeologist, he didn't care to collect any sample or make pictures of them. When the investigator came to interview him a week later, it had been repeatedly raining and every possible material element had disappeared. Of course it did.
I know what they were growing in their greenhouse. Mushrooms.
Yeah, that's where the tainted mayonnaise came from. Let's see. I think that's the only one. And there's some drawings that the son made or somebody made. Oh, interestingly, GD's son declared that on April 14th, 1990, he had observed at the same place a gigantic, low-flying cigar. He made artistic representations of what his parents reported, which he completed by hieroglyphics that he calls Kabbalistic, magical, or aliens.
I don't know what to make out of that. Did he do it in crayon?
No, actually looks pretty good.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Send me the link and I'll put it up on our website.
Okay. Yeah, it's a PDF.
People can look at it.
There was one other case where Sobeps said there was some trace elements of yellowed grass or maybe some indentions, but no UFO was seen around it, so don't know how they come up with that necessarily. And that is it. I mean, from there, we get the radar screen stuff, and really all we have are the sightings, the many, many sightings. And I do think there's some validity. I don't like to say, I don't want to totally dismiss the entire country of Belgium here.
You're only dismissing 13,000 of them.
No, you misunderstand where I'm going. But I mean, I just think that there is a distinct possibility, just the same as I'm quite certain that in 1947, not everyone suddenly saw flying saucers. That suddenly there was this gigantic invasion of flying saucers, that a lot of people saw other things, but it was like, hey, I bet it's that flying saucer. I feel like that could be the case here. But the reports came from somewhere. And that, and really, I put a lot of validity into those first reports when it began in November. Mm-hmm. People calling, the police showing up, and then chasing it and viewing it for quite a long time. And then other police officers involved. And people their dispatcher looked out the window and they were able to see the lights and stuff. And I just don't know how. Maybe if the UFO thing was hot and heavy in the news and all the newspapers are reporting it, and then the police saw a helicopter with a spotlight on it, maybe then a misidentification may have been possible, and they said, yeah, we saw it. But this is where it started, and that's where the description of it came from. And then so many other reports came out. Again, it's like slowly moving, relatively low altitude, scanning the Belgium countryside. I just know that's what it is. I mean, that's what's been reported. I don't like to just blow it off on tainted mayonnaise and say a bunch of people are crazy, but something happened there. Who knows what it really was? No one.
Yeah, inconclusive. It says where you're going to fall out on this one.
Pretty much.
And yeah, I'm not going to say anything either way. I mean, I like everything, I lean to the terrestrial explanations, but I mean, I'm not willing to 100% roll out the possibility that this was some alien craft. I'm just not convinced by any of the information that I've been presented with so far. Doesn't mean somebody couldn't come to me with some more information that would make me shift my understanding of the situation more, move the needle more in that direction. But
I'm with you on that. I mean, again, I think something happened here. There was some kind of sighting of, I mean, I don't know. First of all, I've never one time on this show said that I believe flying saucers are extraterrestrial, just to be clear. I know that there's something going on. There's something to the phenomenon, something extraordinary. I believe that. This could be a case of that very well. There's so many reported sightings, but I do take just a little bit of issue with a country that small not having any kind of verifiable photographic evidence or videos. Video cameras were still, pretty popular in 1990 and 1989. Just, especially if this was going on. Let's say this was happening in Morgantown right now. You know, if somebody said there was a triangular craft that's been going on for weeks, all these people have seen it. You've talked to people that have seen it. Don't you think you'd throw your camera in your car?
Yeah, you throw it in the car, but you wouldn't be able to see anything from the ambient light of all the couch fires.
I didn't say do it after homecoming or whenever it is. Is that when it is?
Basically, any football game we win, apparently, or
lose.
I don't know. Just people like burning couches here.
Oh, that's right. Burning down the couch.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, bringing this story to the podcast has been kind of a report. I mean, this is a big one. We like to bring the big historical waves or incidents to, especially for maybe people that are just getting into this, getting into UFOs, want to know a little more about them. So this is the UFO wave, the Belgium UFO wave. I don't know that we have to draw any kind of conclusions on this show. Just, I want to bring in the facts. There are times that I'm happy to speculate, as some listeners have pointed out.
Ditto.
But anyway, thank you. We love that, by the way. We love any kind of feedback. Any kind of feedback, we love it. But I will put this out there. If there's listeners that you have a different idea, if there's some information we didn't cover, if you want some kind of clarification, I mean, we like to do a little bit of a follow-up from time to time. So, you know, if there's something about the Belgium UFO wave you feel like we're missing, then, yeah, write the show, firstcontact@cosmicsponge.com, and we will share it with everyone if we deem it worthy.
Or if we're just bored.
Yeah. Or we don't have any content for that night. So,
well, there's no shortage of content.
There is no shortage of source material.
That's for sure.
So what else you got for me tonight? Is there any kind of conclusions we can draw from this? Anything else we've got to say about the Belgium UFO wave? Thousands of sightings. 1,282 officially reported sightings to the UFO group. We did have some professors that took it pretty seriously, some learned people. To me, the radar data, the F-16 incident, maybe not. No visual sightings.
You know whose fault that is? Raytheon. They need to make a better radar system.
They have since then.
They have.
So,
as we've mentioned.
So with that incident, I mean, if you want to totally dismiss that incident, because a lot of the emphasis is on that, so the debunkers put a lot of emphasis on that as well. But I think you can still dismiss that completely, and you're still stuck with all these sightings. Or whenever our alien overlords take over, and maybe they'll tell us. They were scanning for mushrooms.
We could approach it using the scientific method. Get a hold of some tainted mayonnaise, take it and see if we see any triangular UFOs.
Take it to a pub, you know.
In Belgium.
In Belgium. It doesn't necessarily have to be in Belgium, I don't think.
I want to go to Belgium.
Well, we could go to Belgium to make sure we do the control exactly right. We put out 2 jars of mayonnaise, 1 tainted, 1 not. We've got to have our control group.
That's right. I want to be in the tainted mayo group.
And then we fly a helicopter over town with a spotlight on and see what happens.
Man, I would love to have some Belgium. I would love to try it, man. I love fries. I love fries with dipping sauces.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently the Belgians, they have some kind of really cool way they make their mayo dipping sauce.
Yeah, but you have to be careful, apparently.
Really cool. Really cool way. I mean, a psychedelic way of making their mayo dipping sauce.
Yeah. Apparently it makes a lot of people see triangular-shaped UFOs.
I'm in.
All right. Anything else, Jimmy?
Nope, that's it.
All right. Well,
I think we're good.
Anyway, I would like to say I appreciate everybody tuning in, listening to the show. We've gathered quite a few listeners already, and we're very surprised because, you know, we're hard to find because we're so new. But somehow you guys have found us, and we're just thrilled with that. We love coming to you with this. And once again, we want to try and make a community, so communicate with us. And, you know, maybe we'll share that information on the show. If you've had some type of encounter, let us know, and we would love to read that on the show and share it with the listeners. You can remain totally anonymous. Don't forget to rate and review. Do the up thumb thing anywhere you listen to your podcast. That helps other people find the show.
Yeah, and also, I guess one thing I did want to add was that we are adding a lot of content to both our YouTube channel and our website with plans to add more and more as we go forward. And please join us over at our Facebook page and group if you have anything you want to add or start some discussions to dive into some of this stuff in more detail.
Yep. Yeah, we've some of the news stories we talked about at the first of the show today are actually posted on there. So if you want to find out more about that 16 millimeter frame you can get of alien autopsy, the story's there. If you want to find out about more fire in the ground, the story's there, and some of the other stuff that we've talked about. So
fire in the ground.
So anyway, I guess I am done. This is Stephen Hawk. I'm signing out, and I'll see you next week.
Jimmy Co. Ditto. That's all for this week's episode of Cosmic Sponge. Please don't forget to rate and review us wherever you listen. It helps others find the show. If you have any questions or have a story you'd like to share, you can contact us using our email account, firstcontact@cosmicsponge.com. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next week.